Leading Tickles is a community that is comprised of what was once three distinct communities. Leading Tickles East in Butler's Cove, Leading Tickles West on Cull Island, and Leading Tickles South on the main island shoreline opposite Cull Island. The community was originally named Ladle Tickles in 1836, and by 1845 the name had been changed to Leading Tickles, and that name eventually morphed into its current moniker of Leading Tickles by 1891. The first Newfoundland census conducted in the area in 1836 recorded just 2 families living in the community. In 1845, the population count had reached 98 residents, and by 1857, only 12 years later, 302 residents were living in the community. The earliest family names included Alcock, Noseworthy, Peddle, Rousel, and Ward. Many of these early settlers to the community arrived from older settlements in eastern Newfoundland, and the 1857 census showed that 3 of the residents were born in England and 2 were from Ireland. In 1884, it was shown that 111 men in the community were engaged in the fishery, and of those 111, 58 men worked at the Labrador fishery. The nearby lumber industry provided 64 men with employment, and every year several men from the community were involved in the annual seal hunt. By 1891, the population had reached 399 people, and by this time, Leading Tickles had become a commercial center for the area, complete with merchants and traders. When the economy suffered a downturn in the early 1900s, many residents moved from the community to find work in places such as Lewisport, Botwood, and Grand Falls, Windsor. After 1936, even more members of the community moved away when work began on the new airport in Gander. In 1945, the population count had dipped to 302 residents. When the fishery picked up again in the 1970s, Many new settlers moved into the community. The fishing remained strong into the late 1980s, and there were about 100 people involved in the local fishery, and they were assisted by an improved fish plant that was able to handle their seafood harvest. By 1981, the population of the community had reached its peak at 641 people. The first Anglican church was constructed in 1869. The first school was built by 1891, and a second school was constructed 10 years later. In the early years, schooling was conducted in private homes. The main religious denomination in Leading Tickles was the Church of England, with a small group of Roman Catholics living in Leading Tickles East. The Salvation Army arrived into Leading Tickles in 1935, and the Pentecostal assemblies came to Leading Tickles and set up a church in the 1970s. Currently, many of the family names in Leading Tickles show that they are direct descendants of the early settlers. We're talking about families such as Alcock, Burton, Chippett, Cook, Earl, Haggett, Hannum, Loveman, Marsh, Mitchell, Newman, Noseworthy, Parsons, Peddle, Rousel, and Ward.